Hello, this is Alec Kerr of the Conway Daily Sun, and I'm joined by
Ezra J.T. Alves from M&D Productions.
And we talk about guilty pleasure movies, movies that you're kind of afraid to admit that you like. Everyone else is around you, you know, saying, "Oh, that movie's terrible," and you're just like, "Oh yeah, I hate that movie," but inside you're just
torn up.
You're crying. You're crying on the inside. And so one movie that's definitely a guilty pleasure. No way in hell can you consider it a good movie, but you kind of just like it anyway. Is Super Mario Brothers the movie?
Oh, I come out and I defend this movie. I mean, most people are just like, "How can you like this?" But I grew up with the little pixel guy jumping along and doing his own thing, and then to see, what's his name?
Bob Hoskins.
Bob Hoskins.
John Leguizamo.
Yes, two very big names right there, just involved in some part of my childhood, made into this manifestation of just new awesomeness. Well, I think it's awesome because I'm a big geek, but
it has nothing to do with the video game. I mean,
no, not at all.
It's like this bizarre
fantasy thing.
It really makes no sense. Like the mushrooms, like literally the entire like Goomba city or whatever it's called is taken over by this fungus that used to be the king.
It all was one entity of this large fungus that's just kind of strewn about.
And they're literally plumbers, and it's like this parallel universe, and Dennis Hopper is King Koopa, and he's this half dinosaur, half man.
And there's a lot of things that just don't make a whole lot of sense for the whole movie.
No.
But still, it's an awesome movie, and Bob Hoskins, I mean, he's just awesome in whatever movie he's in, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and everything like that. Just
it's funny, though, because both Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo are on the record as saying that they hated making the movie and that they were drunk most of it.
I did not know that.
They were drunk most of it. And I guess for the last, maybe last third of the movie, at one point, Bob Hoskins' hand got broken because it got slammed into a car door, so they just had a cast that looked like a hand.
That's awesome. I never knew that.
I think that the band Devo should have sued because they have the whole thing is that they de-evolve things.
Yes.
There's the de-evolution machine.
These guns, and then when they try to de-evolve King Koopa in the end, you got this awful dragon, he's just gonna take them all out.
Yeah, he's like this terrible T-Rex thing, and I was just like, no! Devo, get on top of this. They created de-evolution. This is copyright infringement. That was actually the first video game adaptation ever.
Which was a milestone for its own way.
And I think like Mortal Kombat was probably the next one, but
yeah, that was another movie.
Yeah, and I guess we could talk about that as another guilty pleasure because I do kind of enjoy Mortal Kombat. Not the second one. The second one was an abomination.
Awful.
Terrible special effects, but
the first one was unique as well. It was like taking a kung fu movie and adapting certain little hints of magic and whatnot into it.
I'm also a fan of Highlander, which I suppose qualifies as a guilty pleasure movie.
Well, I mean, but it's also very, very often referenced to whenever any kind of geek thing. It's like it's much like referencing to Star Trek or Star Wars.
Right. It's more of a kind of a cult classic. But so I was a huge Highlander fan when that came out, and so I was excited that Christopher Lambert was Lord Raiden. Yeah. And so that made me happy for Mortal Kombat, and I liked Liu Kang and. It was one of the few. I was never a gamer, but I did have a friend who was way into Mortal Kombat and would always have me come over and literally, well, not literally kick my ass, but in the video game world, he would literally kick my digitally literally kick my ass.
Yes, in the game.
And so I did have some familiarity with it, and I did enjoy it, and I was excited for the second one. And when I saw it, I was like, my good lord,
what have they done?
This is terrible.
But which reminds me of another guilty pleasure movie that I liked to watch when I was growing up was Willow, and to keep with this whole fantasy thing, I mean that's just complete diving headfirst into a fantasy movie, creating its own little world, and I think they did a wonderful job doing so. But at the same time, I try to describe it to friends who aren't necessarily into fantasy movies or something like that, and they'll be like, "So it's not Lord of the Rings?" Oh, then why bother?
Yeah.
And
I actually think Willow is a pretty good movie, and I think it was fairly well regarded when it first came out. But I guess trying to introduce it to new people might be hard to do. The interesting thing is that it was produced by George Lucas, and he wrote it. And when you realize that, you're like, my gosh, this is just Star Wars in medieval time.
Yep.
You have a guy who has this skull mask, and you're like, look, that's Darth Vader. And then you have this evil wizardess, I guess.
Kind of like the Emperor.
She's kind of like the Emperor. You have these two. They have these little brownies. They're like little dwarfs.
Yeah,
they're like R2-D2 and C-3PO.
Pretty much, yeah. They're the comic relief. Yeah.
Then you have Val Kilmer. He's essentially Han Solo. Willow,
he's kind of Luke Skywalker.
He's kind of Luke Skywalker, and you're just like, George, you really can't write anything else, can you?
Stuck in the same idea. It's kind of like, it came out, was it before or it was after Star Wars, right?
Oh, yeah, it was well after Star Wars. It came out in 88.
Like, it was almost like he just kind of bored. He's like, hey, I want to do something like this, and just kind of spurted it out. Not many people really jumped onto the whole Willow bandwagon.
No. And it was also kind of throwing a bone to Warwick Davis, who actually played one of the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi.
Really?
And then there was also a couple TV movies.
Was he also
Ewok Adventure? He was also the Leprechaun.
Really?
Yes.
He had a lot of work. I know. I think didn't he play in what's that movie when it's like the robot with the really depressed robot? It just came out.
Oh, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes, didn't he play that?
He was
robot?
He was the robot, I believe. No, maybe he was the robot, but he didn't do the voice. Alan Rickman was the voice.
Yeah, definitely Alan Rickman for the voice. Unmistakable there.
And Warwick Davis also has a bit role as one of the professors in, I think, all of the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah, I thought he looks very familiar. I was like, he looks familiar, but I couldn't think of what movie.
I think throughout the whole series he's had maybe like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, but it's always just like, oh look, it's Warwick Davis, it's Willow.
Yeah.
And he was in however many of those Leprechaun movies. Leprechaun in Space, Leprechaun in the Hood, Back to the Hood, went to the Hood twice.
He wasn't done there.
No, he had to go back again. He needed to get high again.
Yep.
I haven't watched any of those movies. I've watched the trailers, and that's really enough.
Yeah, I feel like I'm all set with that. But then again, that could be somebody else's guilty pleasure.
It could be. I mean, I imagine there are tons of people who adore the Leprechaun movies. Yeah. And just horror movies in general. Horror movies are usually a source of guilty pleasures. Like movies like Critters.
I loved Critters growing up.
Again, not a movie I've seen, only I've watched the trailers, but I kind of want to watch Critters, because it was described as being like a knockoff of Gremlins.
It was. They were like little fuzzballs that just kind of rolled around, and then they didn't really do too much. Yeah. I mean, like, they'd show the little guy, he'd be like, man, shoot little spines, and then someone would go, oh no, they got me, and then they'd go numb. And then they'd have these little fuzzball Muppets going, nom, nom, where you could like almost see the arms of the people gnawing on them, and I remember being like 6 years old, my friends, and then like at one point one of them, before they exploded, I forget why they exploded, but he's like, oh no, and he swore, and I was in the same room with him and his parents, and I was like, we're like, and then nothing, it was just fine, it's like, whatever, it's a movie.
And that was, and that had numerous sequels as well, and I believe Leonardo DiCaprio was in like Critters 3 or something like that, yeah. Because I just go on and I just read about movies that I have no intention of ever watching, but I just read about them anyway.
Well, because some of them have neat little fun facts about them.
Like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
I believe it was Critters 3.
It's funny how things just kind of mesh together like that.
And Jennifer Aniston, her first movie was Leprechaun.
You never know where the next big name is going to be coming from, so
that's
why you got to watch all the little B movies and indie movies. Actually, a lot of good movies are from in the indie section.
So, I think that's good.
Guilty pleasures.
Guilty pleasures.